There is a lot of confusion coming out of the Russian camp. Obviously, Russia just dealt with a potential almost coup and takedown, but Putin nonetheless finally responded. Now, the response from President Putin, which we will go through in this video, it was not consistent with what everyone thought the deal was going to be with Mr. Prigozhin, head of Wagner, and the Wagner troops who were involved with the coup of Russia. The reason why this is all confusing, here's the Kremlin spokesman, and on the right side here, these are the details of what Prigozhin and Wagner essentially was going to accept to stop this coup. Number one is that charges against Prigozhin will be dropped. Wagner fighters that did not take part in the rebellion will sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense. Wagner fighters that did take part will not be charged. That's very important, because when you go through Putin's speech, it seems to be a little more different than what the Kremlin was actually saying when Prigozhin was negotiating with Russia. Now, as we go through this video, you'll start to realize what I'm talking about. It really looks like President Putin is trying to do some damage control. He's trying to praise the military for stopping the advance on Wagner. Now, I know what a lot of you are already thinking. Wagner stopped on their own, so you're praising the military for helping you. I thought the military essentially turned on you. We'll get into all of that, but let's see what Mr. Putin has to say.
Гражданская солидарность показала, что любой шантаж, попытки устроить внутреннюю смуту обречены на провал. Повторю, была проявлена высочайшая консолидация общества.
First red flag. There's been a lot of coming together. From what a lot of other people were saying, there's been a lot of falling apart. You have two cities with over 1.1 million people who were cheering on Wagner. So it's hard to really provide a case. I know that's a small sample compared to the rest of Russia, but it's very hard to show a compelling case how all of the Russians came together. I don't think that was necessarily 100% true, but I digress.
Исполнительной и законодательной власти на всех уровнях. Твердую, однозначную позицию поддержки конституционного порядка заняли общественные организации, религиозные конфессии, ведущие политические партии. Фактически все российское общество. Всех объединило и сплотило главное – ответственность за...
Also, Putin is giving a lot of praise to legislation in the government. I haven't actually gone through the speech. We're doing it organically. I'm not fake on this channel. I am really interested to see if he's going to talk about Belarus, because if it wasn't for Belarus, Putin would still be hiding in a compound right now.
Судьбу Отечества. Подчеркну, с самого начала событий незамедлительно были приняты все необходимые решения по нейтрализации возникшей угрозы, по защите конституционного строя, жизни и безопасности наших граждан. Вооруженный мятеж в любом случае был бы подавлен. Организаторы мятежа, несмотря на утерю адекватности, не могли этого не понимать. Все они понимали, в том числе то, что пошли на преступные...
This part's true right here. Wagner did say, hey, the main reason why they stopped is because they realized this is not a good idea. That is true.
И ослабление страны, которая сейчас противостоит колоссальной внешней угрозе, беспрецедентному давлению извне, когда на фронте со словами «ни шагу назад гибнут наши товарищи», на фронте со словами «ни...»
Bit of a revelation right here. Putin almost never talks about any sort of failures on the front lines. Obviously, he cannot deny this fact, and he has had some public funerals for the military and honoring the Russians, but you almost never see Putin doing something like this, talking about something like this.
Давлению извне, когда на фронте со словами «ни шагу назад гибнут наши товарищи». Однако организаторы мятежа, предав свою страну, свой народ, предали и тех, кого втянули в преступление, лгали им, толкали их на смерть, под огонь, на то, чтобы стрелять в своих. Именно такого исхода братоубийства хотели враги России и неонацисты в Киеве, и их западные покровители, и разного рода национал-предатели.
So you can see here Putin is taking the take of, you know, these guys are the bad guys, you guys are the good guys, we all came together, and you see what happens when we come together? When we come together, we can stop a strike. But again, plenty of video evidence of millions of people and other people being excited for Wagner.
Хотели, чтобы солдаты России убивали друг друга, чтобы погибли военнослужащие и мирные жители, чтобы в конечном счете проиграла Россия, а наше общество раскололось захлебнулась в кровавой междоусобице. Они потирали руки, мечтая взять реванш за свои неудачи на фронте и в ходе так называемого контрнаступления. Но просчитались. Благодарю всех наших военнослужащих, сотрудников правоохранительных органов, специальных служб, которые...
By the way, there was an entire Special Forces Brigade, the 22nd Special Forces Brigade, who actually joined Wagner. So I don't know if we'll ever hear from them again. It's hard to find news with these specific units because they are specialized units. But I don't know if he's throwing a dig at the other units who didn't turn over with Wagner.
Встали на пути у мятежников, сохранили верность долгу, присяге и своему народу. Мужество, самопожертвование павших героев-летчиков уберегли Россию от трагических, разрушительных последствий.
This is the biggest news that comes out of the entire conflict. This whole thing would have been swept under the rug, essentially, if the pilots weren't taken out, the Russian pilots, the helicopters and the fighter jets. That is probably the biggest reason why Putin now is like, we're going after Wagner.
Вместе с тем, мы знали и знаем, что подавляющее большинство бойцов и командиров группы «Вагнер» — это тоже патриоты России, преданные своему народу и государству. Они доказали это своим мужеством на поле боя, освобождая Донбасс и Новороссию. Их попытались использовать в темную против своих братьев по оружию, с которыми они вместе сражались ради страны и ее будущего. Поэтому с самого начала событий по моему прямому поручению предпринимались шаги, чтобы избежать большой крови.
So you got to understand, Wagner, before this, was actually really well liked. They were really well hyped by the Russian people. They were a public entity, and it was like, hey, you're part of Wagner, you must be an elite fighter. I know we get the perception of like, hey, these guys are all prisoners, but a lot of them were elite fighters. Former Spetsnaz and whatever. And again, I'm not hyping up Wagner, I'm not a fan of Wagner, but from the perspective of them, they liked Wagner.
Для этого потребовалось и время. В том числе, чтобы дать возможность одуматься тем, кто совершил ошибку. Понять, что их действия решительно отвергаются обществом и к каким трагическим, разрушительным последствиям для России, для нашего государства ведет авантюра, в которую их втравили. Благодарю тех солдат и командиров группы «Вагнер», которые приняли единственно правильное решение. Не пошли на братоубийственное...
I mean, I would be thanking Wagner too and really kissing up to them. Because again, Wagner does have the... If Wagner has the capability to do that, who knows what other chaos they can do.
Кровопролитие. Остановились у последней черты. Сегодня у вас есть возможность продолжить службу России, заключив контракт с Министерством обороны или другими силовыми органами. Либо вернуться к своим родным и близким. Кто хочет, сможет уйти в Белоруссию. Данное мною обещание будет исполнено.
Okay, so this is a really big deal, considering when you look at the pay differences between Wagner and a regular Russian soldier. You'd be losing 3 times your pay joining the Russian military. And I'm sure a lot of those Wagner fighters know if people find out they were former Wagner, they're going to get treated like crap. So you really only have 2 choices. It's you go to Belarus, maybe start a new life, or you somehow hide out in Russia. But nonetheless, I feel like if you were Wagner, and especially if you were a part of this, you go to Belarus. But again, what is going to happen to the people in Africa, the Wagner fighters in Africa? They're like watching all this, like, what just happened?
Повторю, выбор за каждым из вас. Но, уверен, это будет выбор воинов России, которые осознали свою трагическую ошибку. Признателен президенту Беларуси Александру Григорьевичу Лукашенко за его усилия и вклад в мирное разрешение ситуации. Но повторю, именно патриотический настрой граждан, консолидация всего российского общества сыграли в эти дни решающую роль. Эта поддержка позволила нам вместе преодолеть сложнейшие испытания для нашей Родины.
Now I have to put this out there. The military members who left the Russian military, joined Wagner, and then came back into the Russian military, confirmed, unconfirmed, mostly through your Telegram outlets and other sort of sources, that these military members are not being treated the best. you can only imagine exactly what I'm talking about, but I'll leave it at that. I think it's important to realize that there is a side to the story that it's really hard to fully get the facts out of, where military members are taking care of their own. They're pretty much doing their own kangaroo court system, if you will. So that's essentially the video response from Mr. Putin. He didn't really mention Mr. Prigozhin. I think he's literally just done with him. Mr. Prigozhin is in the news 24/7. I wake up every morning expecting to see Mr. Prigozhin a rant or something. One thing I'll be a little confused about is how Wagner will be able to operate out of Belarus. Are they still going to be able to get contracts? Are they going to do the same thing they did for Russia, as in be an ambassador for Belarus and go down to Africa? That's their problem. I don't support Wagner, but another big takeaway is that this entire thing really Ukraine didn't necessarily get to capitalize on their lines collapsing, as in the Russian lines collapsing on the east. If anything, now they have a threat at the north. They have an entire PMC to the north. So we'll see what happens. In my opinion, I think things will proceed as normal, unfortunately, and it's a shame that this conflict is happening. Nice to meet a lot of you guys. I know a lot of you are new. Make sure you guys subscribe, and my name is T-SPLY. Comment your opinions down below, and we'll see you later.